Let me tell you something that most travel guides will never tell you. There are places on this earth where a decent, emotionally available, relationship-minded man is genuinely hard to find. Not because the women there are difficult or picky or broken in some way, but because the numbers simply do not add up. Demographics, history, culture, economics, all of these forces have quietly shaped certain countries into places where women outnumber men so significantly, or where the gap between what women want and what local men offer is so wide that a foreign man who shows up with good intentions, a genuine smile, and a willingness to be present is not just welcomed. He is, in many cases, something close to a miracle. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking this sounds too good to be true. You are thinking there must be a catch or a shadow side or something I am glossing over, and I promise you, I will not gloss over anything today. I have spent over a decade traveling to these places, talking to women, talking to expats who moved there, talking to men who found love in the most unexpected corners of the world, and my goal today is not to sell you a fantasy. My goal is to tell you the truth about 15 specific countries where the demographic and cultural realities genuinely create unusual romantic opportunity, and what you need to understand about each one before you book the flight. I am Julia. Let us get into it. Country 1, Latvia. If you have never been to Latvia, close your eyes for a moment and imagine a country of dark forests, medieval cobblestone streets, amber coastlines, and women so striking that first-time visitors genuinely wonder if something surreal is happening. Then open your eyes, because it is real, and the demographic story behind it is one of the most extraordinary in all of Europe. Latvia has one of the most severe gender imbalances of any country on the continent. According to data that has remained consistently grim for decades, Latvian women outnumber men by roughly 15 to 17% across the general adult population, and in older age groups, the gap becomes even wider. In some regions, for every 100 women, there are fewer than 85 men of comparable age. Think about what that number actually means when you are standing in a bar in Riga on a Friday night. The causes are multiple and layered. Latvia was part of the Soviet Union until 1991, and the demographic destruction wrought by World War II, Soviet-era deportations, and the general suppression of male populations across that entire region left scars that have never fully healed. Then came the 1990s and the economic chaos of post-Soviet transition, which triggered massive emigration, and men, historically, emigrate at higher rates than women, leaving communities where women stayed behind, built lives, raised children, and kept the country functioning. More recently, Latvia has experienced some of the highest rates of male premature mortality in the European Union, driven by cardiovascular disease, alcohol-related illness, and workplace accidents. The women who remain are extraordinary. Latvian women are reserved by nature, Nordic in their emotional restraint in a way that can initially read as cold, but is actually more like the outside of a thermos. Beneath the composure is tremendous warmth, intelligence, loyalty, and a dry wit that rewards patience enormously. They are well educated. Latvia consistently ranks high in female educational attainment, and they tend to be stylish in a distinctly European way, pulling off elegance on modest budgets through sheer aesthetic instinct. Riga, the capital, is where the energy concentrates. It is a genuinely beautiful city, one of the best preserved Art Nouveau capitals in the world, with an old town that belongs on any traveler's list, regardless of romantic motivations. The cultural scene is serious: opera, classical music, theater, gallery openings. Latvian women participate in that cultural life actively, and meeting someone at a concert or a museum is not unusual. They are not particularly comfortable with aggressive approaches in bars, but they respond extremely well to genuine conversation, intellectual curiosity, and the kind of patient, unhurried attention that signals you are interested in them as a person, rather than a conquest. For a man who is willing to slow down, appreciate beauty in its quieter registers, and build something real over time, Latvia is extraordinary. The women there are not looking for entertainment. They are looking for someone who means it. Country 2, Lithuania. Crossing south from Latvia into Lithuania, the demographic picture looks remarkably similar, though the cultural flavor shifts in interesting ways. Lithuania also suffers from one of Europe's most pronounced gender imbalances. Women outnumber men by a significant margin, and the country has faced some of the highest male mortality rates in the European Union for years. The causes mirror Latvia's in many respects: post-Soviet displacement, economic emigration of men, high rates of alcohol-related death, and a lingering demographic shadow from the mid-20th century. But Lithuanian women have a personality quite distinct from their Latvian neighbors. Where Latvians can be more reserved and Nordic in their emotional presentation, Lithuanians tend to be slightly warmer, more openly expressive, and perhaps a little more fiery when they are comfortable with you. Lithuanian women are often described by men who have lived there as combining a kind of old-world femininity, a genuine love of homemaking, cooking, celebration, seasonal rituals, with a thoroughly modern intellectual ambition. Many of them speak English fluently, particularly in Vilnius and Kaunas, and they engage in conversation with an ease that makes the initial awkwardness of meeting someone foreign far less of an obstacle. Vilnius is one of Europe's most underrated cities, and I will say that without hesitation. The Old Town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site of considerable beauty. There is a thriving cafe culture, a growing international community, and a social scene that is warm and inclusive in ways that surprise visitors expecting post-Soviet formality. The arts are important here. Lithuanian cinema, literature, and music have produced internationally recognized names, and the women you meet in these circles bring a depth of cultural engagement that enriches every conversation. Lithuanian family values are strong and central to who these women are. They are not casual about relationships. When a Lithuanian woman decides she is serious about someone, that seriousness is expressed in every gesture, from the food she prepares to the way she introduces you to people who matter to her. What they look for in a foreign man is often the same thing Latvian women describe: someone steady, someone who communicates, someone who does not disappear when things get complicated. Country 3, Estonia. The third Baltic state completes a trifecta that any man interested in Eastern Europe should pay close attention to. Estonia is, by some measures, the most digitally advanced country in the world. E-residency, digital governance, and a startup culture that has produced companies like Skype and TransferWise make it something of a technological marvel wrapped in medieval architecture. And Estonian women bring that same combination of tradition and modernity to their personal lives. Estonia has a notable gender imbalance, though somewhat less extreme than Latvia. Women outnumber men by roughly 8 to 10% across the adult population, with the gap widening significantly in older cohorts. The causes are similar across all three Baltic states: emigration, male mortality patterns, and the long demographic tail of Soviet-era disruption. Estonian women are perhaps the most self-contained of the three Baltic nationalities. They are not unfriendly. Estonians simply have a cultural relationship with silence and personal space that differs fundamentally from more expressive Southern European cultures. They do not fill silence with small talk. They do not perform warmth they do not feel. What they offer instead is something rarer: complete authenticity. When an Estonian woman smiles at you, you know she means it. When she invites you to do something, you know she genuinely wants you there. When she tells you something, you can count on it being true. Tallinn, the capital, is perhaps the most visually arresting of the Baltic capitals. A perfectly preserved medieval city on the edge of the Baltic Sea that feels, walking through it at dusk, like something from a fairy tale. The tech community is international and English-speaking. The cultural life is excellent. And Estonia's proximity to Helsinki, with a 2-hour ferry crossing, means it sits at a cultural crossroads between Nordic and Eastern European influences that gives it a distinct and fascinating character. Learn a few words of Estonian. It is famously difficult, so even the attempt earns enormous goodwill. Be genuine, be patient, and understand that the reward for breaking through Estonian reserve is a depth of loyalty and connection that many men who have experienced it describe as unlike anything they have found elsewhere. Country 4, Ukraine. We have spoken about Ukraine before in other contexts, but no list of countries with significant gender imbalances would be complete without returning to it, because the situation there is, by any measure, one of the most acute in the world. The numbers are stark. Before 2022, Ukraine already had somewhere between 3 and 5 million more women than men of marriageable age, the result of decades of male emigration to Poland and Germany, historically elevated male mortality rates, declining birth rates, and the demographic wreckage of Soviet-era history. The events since then have intensified every aspect of this imbalance dramatically. Hundreds of thousands of men have been lost. Millions of women have been displaced, are living as refugees across Europe, or are navigating a country under existential pressure, raising children alone, managing households alone, building lives under conditions of uncertainty that most people in comfortable Western countries have never come close to experiencing. And yet, this is the part that matters, the part that gets lost when this subject is discussed as pure statistics. The Ukrainian women navigating this reality are not diminished by it. They are tempered by it, tested by it, made more clear-eyed about what they want and what they will not settle for. Ukrainian women who are open to foreign partners in this era are making that choice from a position of clarity, not desperation. They have seen what unreliability looks like. They are done with it. The profile of a Ukrainian woman interested in a foreign partner today is often striking. University educated, frequently multilingual, professionally capable, emotionally intelligent, and possessed of a directness about what she wants from a relationship that can feel almost startling to men used to more circuitous approaches. She is not going to waste your time, and she has no patience for you wasting hers. If you are a serious man looking for a serious woman and you have not yet paid attention to Ukraine, I am telling you plainly, pay attention. Country 5, Russia. Russia is a vast, complicated, demographically fractured country, and the gender imbalance there has been a defining feature of its social landscape for generations. Russian women outnumber men by a substantial margin. In some age groups and regions, the gap reaches 12 to 15%. And the causes are by now familiar. Wartime losses that were never fully recovered from, catastrophic male mortality rates driven by alcohol and cardiovascular disease, and a life expectancy gap that sees Russian men dying on average a full decade before Russian women. What this produces, on the ground, is a country full of educated, accomplished, deeply feeling women who have spent years navigating a dating landscape where the supply of genuinely available, emotionally present men is chronically insufficient. Russian women do not tolerate this without agency. They adapt, they build careers, they cultivate independence, and when they encounter a foreign man who offers what they have not been able to find locally, they respond with a depth of engagement that can feel overwhelming in the best possible way. Russian women from major cities are, frankly, some of the most impressive people you will encounter anywhere. They are educated across multiple disciplines. It is entirely normal to meet a Russian woman who holds a degree in engineering and can also play the piano, speak 3 languages, and quote 19th century poetry from memory. They dress with deliberate intention. They cook with the kind of dedication that treats food as a love language. They are loyal with an intensity that borders on ferocious once trust is established. The current geopolitical situation creates genuine practical complications for international connections, and I will not pretend otherwise. But Russian women living abroad, students, professionals, long-term expats spread across Europe, the Americas, and beyond, represent one of the most remarkable pools of single women in the world, and the ones who have left are often precisely the most open, curious, globally minded individuals from an already extraordinary talent pool. Country 6, Belarus. Belarus does not get talked about much in Western travel and dating circles, and that relative obscurity is itself part of what makes it worth paying attention to. It is a country of about 9.5 million people, sitting between Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, and Russia, with a demographic profile that closely mirrors its neighbors. women significantly outnumber men, particularly in adult and older age groups, for the usual combination of historical, Soviet, and health-related reasons. Belarusian women share certain characteristics with their Russian neighbors: a directness, an educational seriousness, a commitment to femininity in the traditional sense of the word without apology. But they also carry a cultural quality that visitors often describe as slightly softer, less guarded, more immediately approachable than their counterparts in Moscow or St. Petersburg. The country has not had the same exposure to the kind of cynicism that large international cities can generate, and there is a quality of openness in Belarusian women, particularly those from Minsk, that men who have encountered it frequently find disarming. Minsk itself is not a postcard city in the conventional sense. It was largely destroyed in World War II and rebuilt in Soviet grand style, with broad boulevards and monumental architecture that reflects a very different aesthetic from the cobblestone charm of Vilnius or Riga. But the cultural life is genuine. The restaurant scene has improved dramatically in recent years, and the people carry a warmth that the architecture does not always suggest. The practical situation for visiting Belarus has been extremely complicated in recent years, given the political context, and I would encourage anyone interested to research current conditions thoroughly. But the Belarusian women who have emigrated, and many have, particularly since 2020, carry the same warmth, intelligence, and relationship orientation with them wherever they land. Country 7, Moldova. Moldova is the smallest and, by most economic measures, the poorest country in Europe. And that fact shapes its demographic story in a way that is both tragic and, for the purposes of this conversation, profoundly relevant. Massive emigration over the past 3 decades has hollowed out Moldova's working-age population in ways that have no parallel in Europe. Roughly 1 in 3 Moldovans lives abroad. The people who have left are disproportionately male and disproportionately young, which means the country that remains has a striking surplus of women at every age level. Moldovan women are, in my experience, among the most naturally warm and domestically generous women in all of Eastern Europe. They come from a culture that straddles Romanian and Russian influences. Moldova has a complex identity, with a population divided between those who identify primarily with Romania and those with stronger ties to Russian language and culture. And from that cross-cultural position, they have absorbed the best of both traditions. The Romanian warmth and expressiveness, the Russian depth and seriousness, the Balkan love of food and hospitality and gathering around a table. Chisinau, the capital, is not a glamorous city. It is modest, a little worn at the edges, with the particular aesthetic of a post-Soviet small capital that has not yet had the economic resources to fully reinvent itself. But within that modesty is a genuine and unpretentious culture, and the women there bring to relationships a wholesomeness and sincerity that is genuinely rare. They are not performing, they are not trying to impress. They are simply being themselves, and who they are is consistently impressive enough. For a man who approaches Moldova without expectations inflated by more famous destinations, the experience of connection there can be quietly extraordinary. Country 8, Armenia. Now we move into the Caucasus, and the world shifts dramatically. From the post-Soviet cultural universe of Eastern Europe into something older, more deeply Mediterranean in flavor, more intensely family-structured, and in certain ways, more romantically concentrated than anything we have discussed so far. Armenia is a country of about 3 million people, with a notable gender imbalance driven primarily by emigration. Armenian men have been leaving for Russia, for Europe, for the United States, for anywhere that economic opportunity beckoned, for generations. The Armenian diaspora is enormous. Somewhere between 7 and 10 million Armenians live outside the country, and the pattern of who leaves has long skewed male. Women stay, men go. The community contract reshapes itself around their absence. Armenian women are shaped by one of the world's oldest continuous cultures. Armenia was the first country in the world to adopt Christianity as a state religion in 301 AD, and the cultural weight of that ancient heritage in art, architecture, music, cuisine, and above all in family structure, runs through every Armenian woman you will meet. The concept of family in Armenia is not a lifestyle choice. It is the architecture of existence, and an Armenian woman's relationship with her own family, with her parents, her grandparents, her extended network of cousins and godparents and neighbors who have known each other for decades, is something a foreign man enters at his own peril if he does not approach it with respect and genuine interest. Armenian women are beautiful in a very specific, intense, dark-eyed, historically Mediterranean way. They are passionate, opinionated, and not inclined towards subtlety when it comes to emotions they consider important. They cook extraordinary food. Armenian cuisine is one of the great underappreciated food cultures of the world, built around grilled meats, lavash bread, pomegranates, apricots, herbs grown in gardens, dishes that carry the memory of a history that includes immense suffering. They bring that same devotion to the people they love. Yerevan, the capital, is one of the most surprising and delightful cities in the former Soviet space. Pink volcanic stone buildings that glow at sunset, a thriving cafe culture along the Northern Avenue and around Republic Square, a wine and brandy tradition that gives every evening a particular depth. The city has been transforming rapidly in recent years, attracting a young, internationally minded population. It is a wonderful place to spend time, and a place where genuine romantic connection is very much possible for a man who approaches with curiosity and respect. Country 9. Georgia, just west of Armenia, separated by the spine of the Lesser Caucasus Mountains. Georgia is another country where a notable gender imbalance combines with extraordinary women, and one of the most distinctive and magnetic cultures in the world. Georgia's demographic challenge is again primarily driven by emigration, particularly of men to Russia and Turkey for labor, combined with historically higher male mortality rates. The country has roughly 11% more women than men in its adult population, and in rural areas and older age cohorts, the gap is wider. But Georgian women deserve to be spoken about in terms far beyond demographics, because they represent something culturally rare, the product of a civilization that has survived invasions by the Persians, the Mongols, the Ottomans, the Tsars, and the Soviets, and emerged from each assault with its identity, its language, its artistic traditions, and its astonishing food culture, not only intact, but somehow enriched by the pressure. Georgian women are proud, profoundly proud, of their country, their history, their food, their wine, their language, which is one of the oldest and most beautiful written languages in the world. They carry themselves with a dignity that is not arrogance, but rather the natural posture of someone who knows where she comes from and values it. At the same time, they are extraordinarily hospitable in the specifically Georgian sense of tamada culture, the tradition of the table, the toasts, the multi-hour feast that is less a meal than a ritual of community. Tbilisi is, in the opinion of a great many people who know it well, one of the most beautiful and livable cities in the world. The old town rises up along the Mitkvari River, balconied wooden houses leaning over narrow lanes, ancient churches tucked into hillsides, thermal sulfur baths steaming at street level, the Narikala fortress watching over everything from above. It is a city of extraordinary sensory richness, and it attracts a creative international community that mingles with Georgians who have returned from studies and careers abroad. Georgian women who are open to foreign relationships tend to be those with international experience and education, and they bring both the modernity of that experience and the depth of their Georgian roots to any connection. Learning even a word or two of Georgian, a language of almost hypnotic visual beauty, earns respect that cannot be bought in any other way. Country 10, the Philippines. Crossing to Southeast Asia, the Philippines presents a demographic situation that is different in character from Eastern Europe, but equally significant in its romantic implications. The Philippines does not have a crushing numerical gender imbalance. The population is relatively balanced, but it has something that functions similarly, a cultural, religious, and linguistic openness to foreign men that is unmatched almost anywhere in the world. Filipino men, statistically, emigrate for work at higher rates than Filipino women in certain economic contexts. And the ones who stay are, in the perception of many educated Filipino women, frequently unable or unwilling to match the emotional maturity and commitment orientation that these women bring to the table. The result is a vast population of warm, English-fluent, family-oriented, deeply caring women who are not only open to foreign partners, but often genuinely excited by the possibility. The English factor cannot be overstated. The Philippines is the third largest English-speaking country in the world. A Filipino woman can express herself, her humor, her vulnerability, her irritation, her dreams, in English with a natural fluency that eliminates one of the fundamental challenges of cross-cultural romance. There is no awkward pantomime, no Google Translate fumbling over nuance. She can tell you exactly what she means, and she will. Filipino women are warm in a way that is both immediately obvious and deepens with time. The concept of malasakit, a deep concern for another person's well-being that drives constant small acts of care, defines how a Filipino woman who loves you operates on a daily basis. She notices what you need before you say it. She takes pride in making your world more comfortable. She is not doing this because she has been socialized into subservience. She is doing it because care is, for her, the primary language of love. Manila, Cebu, Davao, the Visayas. Each offers a distinct flavor of Filipino warmth and femininity. And dating apps in the Philippines are, frankly, astonishingly active. If you are a genuine foreign man looking for a genuine relationship, you will not wait long to find interest. Country 11. Colombia. South America enters the picture now, and Colombia enters it with all the flamboyance and substance and complexity that the country brings to everything it does. Colombia's demographic situation is shaped significantly by decades of internal conflict that disproportionately affected men through violence, displacement, recruitment into armed groups, and the general chaos of a prolonged civil conflict. The result is a country where, in certain age groups and regions, women substantially outnumber men who are in a position to be stable, present, emotionally available partners. And the women who have built lives in spite of all that complexity are remarkable. Colombian women are celebrated globally for their beauty, and the celebration is not undeserved, but it often obscures how much else there is. Educated Colombian women from cities like Medellin, Bogota, and Cartagena are sophisticated, professionally ambitious, culturally engaged, and possessed of an emotional directness that makes them among the most refreshing people to be in a relationship with anywhere in the world. They do not play games. They do not hide what they feel. They love passionately and expect the same in return, and they have very little patience for men who mistake their warmth for weakness. The family dimension in Colombia is intense and non-negotiable. Familia primero, family first, is not a platitude, it is the operating system. When a Colombian woman brings you into her family's orbit, she is making a statement about you. And the experience of being welcomed into a Colombian family, the food, the noise, the laughter, the multiple simultaneous conversations, the grandmother who insists you eat more, is one of the warmest experiences available to a human being on this planet. Medellin in particular has undergone one of the most dramatic urban transformations of the 21st century, from a city defined by its darkest years to a globally recognized model of innovation and cultural renaissance. It attracts a creative, international, digitally connected population, and its women reflect that energy, modern, ambitious, globally aware, and still rooted in a Colombian warmth that no amount of sophistication can dilute. Country 12. Peru occupies a slightly different position on this list than most of the countries we have discussed, because its demographic situation is regional and socially stratified rather than countrywide. Lima is home to almost 11 million people, roughly a third of the entire national population, and the pattern of internal migration that has built that megacity has produced some interesting gender dynamics in specific neighborhoods and social strata. But Peru belongs on this list primarily for a different reason. Peruvian women are among the most overlooked and underappreciated in all of Latin America, and the gap between their reality and their reputation is enormous. Peruvian women tend to be modest in their self-presentation, not lacking in confidence, but more reserved in how they display it than their Colombian or Brazilian counterparts. They are warm and loyal and family-oriented to a degree that would probably surprise most outsiders. And they come from a cultural context of extraordinary richness, Peru is the product of an Incan civilization, Spanish colonial history, African and Asian immigration waves, and ongoing Amazonian indigenous culture. That diversity of cultural inheritance makes Peruvian women, particularly those from Lima and Cusco, some of the most interesting conversation partners you will ever encounter. The food dimension is worth mentioning because Peruvian cuisine is consistently ranked among the world's best, and the women there carry genuine pride in that heritage. Cooking is an act of cultural identity as much as nourishment, and a Peruvian woman who cooks for you is offering you something from a very deep place. Lima's Miraflores and Barranco districts in particular have a cafe culture, gallery scene, and international community that creates natural opportunities for meaningful connection. The women who move in those circles are educated, curious about the world, and generally quite open to relationships with foreign men who come with genuine interest and respect. Country 13. Brazil. Brazil is too enormous and too complex to reduce to simple demographics, but the relevant facts are these. Brazil has one of the highest male incarceration rates in the world, extraordinary rates of urban violence that disproportionately affect young men, and economic inequality so profound that it creates what amounts to parallel societies within the same city, one where educated professional women have built complete and impressive lives for themselves, and one where the men they might theoretically partner with are navigating circumstances of crushing difficulty. The result is a substantial population of Brazilian women, particularly in the professional educated classes of São Paulo, Rio, Belo Horizonte, and Curitiba, who are not waiting for anyone to complete them, but who are genuinely looking for a partner who can meet them at their level. And the Brazilian assessment of what their level looks like is often quite clear. Emotional maturity, communicativeness, stability, and the specific quality of making a woman feel seen and chosen. Brazilian women are extraordinary. I do not think that word is too strong. The combination of warmth and passion and sensory aliveness that a Brazilian woman brings to a relationship creates an experience that people who have lived it describe in almost mystical terms. She dances not because she is performing, but because she physically cannot hear music without responding to it. She cooks with extravagance, even when the ingredients are simple. She argues with the same passion she brings to making up. She celebrates everything: birthdays, minor victories, the fact that it is Saturday. São Paulo is the most international and the most emotionally complex of the Brazilian cities, full of women who have built real professional power and want a partner sophisticated enough to handle it. Rio is the romantic dream made physical. And the interior of Brazil, the colonial towns of Minas Gerais, the music culture of the Northeast, offers a kind of warmth and rootedness that is less visible internationally, but profoundly real. Country 14, Cambodia. Cambodia is a country that carries extraordinary historical weight, and understanding that weight is essential for any man who wants to understand the women he meets there. The Khmer Rouge genocide of the 1970s, which killed somewhere between a quarter and a third of the entire population, produced a demographic wound that, because the killing was particularly concentrated among the educated, the professional class, and men of fighting age, left Cambodia with one of the most severe gender imbalances of any post-conflict society in history. For decades afterward, women dramatically outnumbered men, and the downstream effects of that imbalance are still visible in today's population structure. Modern Cambodia, particularly in Phnom Penh and Siem Reap, is a country of striking contrasts. Ancient Khmer civilization and UNESCO-protected temples alongside a rapidly developing urban economy, a young population that is intensely connected to the global digital world, and a warming but complicated relationship with international visitors and residents. Cambodian women are gentle in a way that reflects both Buddhist cultural values and the quiet resilience of a people who have survived the unsurvivable. They are not effusive in the way of Latin women. They do not fill a room with noise. They fill it with a quality of presence, attentive, patient, observant, that has its own profound kind of warmth. They are modest in self-presentation, respectful in their dealings with others, and fiercely loyal once trust is established. For foreign men in Cambodia, the cultural and ethical dimensions of the situation demand serious engagement. This is not a country to approach casually or exploitatively. The women who are seeking genuine long-term relationships with foreign men are doing so with a seriousness and a hope that deserves to be met in kind. The men who do well there, the ones who build real relationships, who stay, who integrate into the community, are the ones who came with genuine intentions and demonstrated them through consistency over time. Country 15, Namibia. Our final country takes us to Africa, and specifically to Namibia, a country that most people in the West could not immediately locate on a map, but which presents one of the most interesting demographic and romantic profiles on the continent. Namibia has a significant gender imbalance driven by several intersecting factors. Male mortality rates are elevated by HIV-related illness, labor migration to South Africa and to the country's own mining regions, and the downstream effects of a colonial history that disrupted traditional community structures in ways that created lasting gender asymmetries. In some urban areas and among certain age cohorts, women outnumber men by margins that rival Eastern Europe. But Namibia's situation is relevant here not just demographically, but culturally, because Namibia is one of the most cosmopolitan, English-speaking, and internationally connected countries in sub-Saharan Africa. It was a German colony and then under South African administration for decades, and the result is a country of extraordinary cultural layering. Indigenous groups like the Himba and the Ovambo, German architectural heritage in Lüderitz and Swakopmund, an English-speaking professional class in Windhoek, all coexisting in a country of immense natural beauty. Namibian women from Windhoek and other urban centers tend to be well-educated, English fluent, professionally ambitious, and emotionally direct in a way that resembles, perhaps surprisingly, the directness of Eastern European women. They do not play the ambiguity game. They say what they want. They assess potential partners with clear eyes and high standards. They are not impressed by wealth displays. They are impressed by substance. The natural landscape of Namibia is almost aggressively spectacular. The Namib Desert, one of the oldest on Earth, dropping straight into the Atlantic Ocean at the Skeleton Coast, the fish eagles and hippos of the Caprivi Strip, the extraordinary red dunes of Sossusvlei. Being in Namibia means being constantly reminded that the world is far larger and stranger and more beautiful than ordinary life usually allows you to feel. The women who grow up in that landscape carry something of that vastness with them, a groundedness, a perspective, a sense that the small dramas of daily life exist within a much larger frame. For a man willing to go somewhere genuinely off the beaten romantic path, Namibia offers a combination of extraordinary natural beauty, a socially progressive and educated urban population, and women who bring warmth, directness, and substance to any relationship worth having. Closing thoughts. 15 countries. 15 completely different histories, geographies, languages, and cultural textures. All of them home to women who, for reasons deeply rooted in forces far larger than any individual, are genuinely open to finding love beyond their own borders. What I hope you take away from this is not a shopping list. It is a sense of possibility combined with a sense of responsibility. Every country I have described today is full of real women with real histories and real hopes. They are not props in someone else's romantic adventure. They are people navigating their own complex lives, and the ones who find foreign partners worth loving are the ones who find men worthy of them. If any place on this list has spoken to something in you, a curiosity, a memory, a long-held dream, follow that. Do your homework, learn something real about the culture before you arrive, show up with honesty about who you are and what you want. Be patient, be consistent, and treat every woman you meet as the extraordinary human being she is. The world is, it turns out, full of extraordinary women in extraordinary places, waiting for someone extraordinary enough to find them. I am Julia. Wherever this takes you, go well.